What's happening, guys? Cooper Carter here for G66, and on this week's Fractal Friday, I'm going to show you how to program a killer instant dive bomb effect to get you slamming on your whammy or trim bar, even if you don't have one on your guitar. Whether you call it a tremolo arm or a whammy bar, this guy right here is one of the most fun parts of a guitar, and depending on the type of bridge you have, you can use it to either increase or decrease the tension on the strings, either subtly or dramatically for some pretty cool effects. Now, some guitars don't have these arms on them, and some guitars that do have them don't have the stable tuning apparatuses like this Cutlass here has locking tuners, or you might have a Floyd Rose that'll allow you to really aggressively mess with it and keep your guitar in tune. So whether you don't have a guitar with a whammy bar, you do, but you don't have a guitar that stays in tune well, or you want to create a whammy effect where it dive bombs over a very set amount of time that you can then assign to a foot switch, maybe you don't want to give up an entire pedal just to the whammy effect, then this tutorial is for you. It is incredibly easy to create a dive bomb effect with precision control in Fractal units, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Now, as always, this is a very quick video, but if you guys want to get the absolute most out of your Fractal Audio Systems unit, whether that's the Axe-Fx 3, the FM9, or the FM3, make sure to visit classes.coopercarter.com for my complete Fractal Audio Masterclass series. So I've got a preset set up here using the Rippin' Rev Gen Red 2. I've also got a little bit of tasty studio reverb here to keep things interesting. So let's talk about our dive bomb effect. I start with a pitch block, and I've set the type to classic whammy here. So we're dialing up a classic whammy type pedal. You have the option under mode to select from several different settings. I've gone with up and down 2 octaves. You could try the sound of up and down 1 octave if you're looking for maybe a less dramatic effect, but to get the sound of really dumping your trim arm all the way down where the strings go totally slack, you want that kind of almost unintelligible low pitch of 2 octaves down. So with the control parameter here, if we turn this pitch block on, you'll hear that all the way up is 2 octaves up. All the way down is 2 octaves down. And 50% is parity, kind of unity pitch. And then of course, if we were to go to 25%, we'd have 1 octave down, and 75% 1 octave up. You guys get the idea. So what we want to do is assign this control parameter to a modifier source. I'm going to go ahead and put the tracking here on 0, and I've set the detector source to input 1. Let's right click the control here, and under source, I'm going to select control switch 1. Now we're going to assign this control switch later, but let's talk about what we want it to do. We have a parameter range here, minimum 0, maximum 100%. So 2 octaves down all the way up to 2 octaves up. But when the switch is off, we want to hear the unity pitch. So the same pitch, or 50%. Now we could go in here under parameter range and set this to 50, but it's a little tricky to get it right at 50, and you can't type in 50% here. So instead, what I'm going to do is set our start to 50%, our middle to 25, and our end to 0. That means when our switch is off, we're going to hear the same pitch that we're playing. And when we turn the switch on, it's going to dive down to 0, or 2 octaves down. Now we need to introduce a little bit of attack and release damping here so that it does it naturally. So right now, if I hit my control switch, It's happening immediately, or, over 10 milliseconds. So let's go ahead and add, let's say, 250 milliseconds of attack damping here. That sounds about right. So we can go ahead and add, let's say, maybe 50 milliseconds of release, so it comes back up a little less immediately. Any West Borland fans out there, we're kind of dialing in that sort of sound where you just kind of very quickly dump the trim arm down. Now you will notice that our damping is exponential, and if we put this up to, let's say, a second, we can hear the effect of that. So we'll go ahead and hold the switch down. And since we have exponential behavior, we're slowing down dramatically and taking much longer to get those last few percent. If we set this to linear, it's happening much more, of course, linearly. So I'm going to set this to exponential, though, because I kind of like that sound. This is totally up to you guys. Use your ears, not your eyes here. And let's go ahead and talk about one more thing. We have a slight issue here, which is that now when we are at parity or unity here at 50%, it sounds a little weird. That's because we're hearing the note from a guitar and the 50% note being processed by this pitch block. So let's go ahead and also tie the same control switch to the bypass parameter of this block. We're going to set it to, again, control switch 1, and we want this to be bypassed at minimum and engaged at maximum. So it's off when the switch is off, and it's on when the switch is on. And I'm going to introduce a little bit of damping here as well. So I'm going to set the damping behavior here to linear, and I'm going to introduce about 500 milliseconds of release damping here so that when we let off the switch, we're giving plenty of time to this control modifier to complete its coming back up to unity pitch. So let's check out our dive bombs behavior now. So that's, again, kind of a West Borland effect. You're very quickly dumping the trim arm. On the second pitch block, I've gone ahead and attached the control and bypass parameters to control switch number 2, but I've introduced a considerable amount more damping here. On the attack, I've got almost 2.5 seconds, so that when I hold this switch down, you're getting much more of the kind of end of eruption Van Halen type effect, where it's a very slow, dramatic dropping of the trim arm. Now, this is the kind of thing that in the real world would actually be pretty difficult to control that linearly with an actual trim arm. Maybe Steve Vai could pull that off that cleanly, but you'd really have to know your guitar and the springs in the back of it and how they react to get it that smooth. So if you're going for the type of effect where you need something over, again, a very set amount of time, for example, or you need it to really sound perfectly linear, then this is really the way to do that instead of actually with the trim arm on your guitar. And again, with the release here at 500 milliseconds, I've gone into the bypass parameter here and added almost a second, or I think I typed in actually a second and then it went to 999.9 of release, so that we make sure that the control parameter has finished its run through letting back up. We return up to 50% before the pitch block bypasses. So the effect is powerful and a signature sound, but it's very, very easy to implement here. All we've done is get a classic whammy, set the mode where we want it. Again, you guys can try up and down 1 octave. It's a little less dramatic here. Versus, again, that's totally up to you guys and how you want it to sound, but we've set it to up and down 2 octaves. In this case, we've attached a modifier source to this control parameter, and then we've applied the same control source to the bypass, and we get an instant dive bomb effect. So let's talk about actually triggering or controlling this effect. Now, it is a whammy pedal, so of course you might think, well, let's just put this on a pedal, and that's great if you want to have organic control, but it seems a waste of a pedal for an effect that you just want to trigger, so I have used control switches here. Now, I've gone into my FC per preset, and I've assigned 2 per preset switches, per preset 1 and per preset 2. and they're set to control switch 1, and it's momentary. So all I need to do is press it down and hold it for the effect to come on. And then when I want it to release, I let go of the switch. You could do latching if you want to click it on and then click it off again. I like momentary for this effect specifically. And I've made a custom display here to call this quick dive. And per preset switch number 2 is long bomb. So those are my 2 switches there. When you load this preset into your unit, you're going to see that I've set these to be overrides on layout 7. And it says here in this scene note, use layout 7 per preset override control switches to bomb. So when you pull up your layout 7 here, which you can see by going to FC edit, you're going to see an override of those first 2 buttons after the tap tempo tuner buttons 2 and 3. And because each of those control switches is again tied to the bypass parameters here, it's going to turn on those effects, turn them off, and set these control parameters to run the dive bombs for each one. If you're not a fan, though, of using control switches, or you don't want to override those 2 buttons on layout 7, I've also gone ahead and created 2 scenes here. Scene 2 turns on this first quick dive bomb, and scene 3 activates this second dive bomb effect. So by simply switching between scene 1 and scene 2, or scene 1 and scene 3, you can turn on or off these effects. And the way that I've done that is by going to the controllers tab, and under control switches per scene, in scene 1, control switch 1 and 2 are both off to allow them to be user selectable from the actual physical switches. But on scene 2, control switch 1 is on. And on scene 3, control switch 2 is on and 1 is off. So if I switch between those scenes, you'll see what happens. That way, if you want to set up this type of effect as a scene where that's the sound, the control switch will allow that scene to automatically kick it on, and then you can go back to any other scene that doesn't have that control switch on, and your dive bomb will return back up to normal pitch. So a simple but very cool effect, and 2 different ways to activate it that I hope have opened up some ideas for you guys with your own presets and the use of control switches and control switches in scenes. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, the preset is available for download in the video description off the axe change. If you did enjoy the video, please do make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to G66's channel, and leave me a comment in the comment section below, letting me know what you would like to see on a future Fractal Friday. And as always, if you guys want to get the absolute most out of your Fractal Audio Systems unit, whether that's the Axefex 3, the FM9, or the FM3, make sure to visit classes.coopercarter.com for my complete Fractal Audio Masterclass series. For all things Fractal Audio, keep it right here on G66, and I will see you guys next week on Fractal Friday.